Hello my friends, and thank you for giving this video a watch. This is video number 4 in a 5-part series that I'm just calling some random INFJ advice. And in this one, I want to address how to stop feeling guilty for everything. My sweet, sweet INFJ friends, I know that a lot of you get affected by this, and so I think we just need to address it and get it out into the open and try and figure out what are some tools that we can use and how can we further understand our own brains so we're not just apologizing for existing or apologizing for something that has absolutely no idea, like nothing to do with us. So yeah, I realize I just edited. As is the case with all of these videos in this series, I'm attempting to edit just a little bit less to sort of give this a more conversational type of tone than anything else. I'm not great at that. I like to edit. Editing helps me a great deal, so bear with me here. I'm not going to say I'm sorry. What we do need to discuss is the topic of guilt and INFJs. Being an INFJ, why do we have this sort of urge to feel guilty about things? Why do we want to say I'm sorry all the time? Why are we apologizing all the time, even if it's things that we probably shouldn't be apologizing for? Why is that something that happens to us? Now, obviously, I got to get into a little bit of cognitive function talk here, and there's a huge rabbit hole of that, and I don't want to dive in too much. But I want to just give little flavors, just understand what functions are at work when this sort of thing is happening, but more so focus on what it is that you can do to get rid of these feelings, or at least to look at them rationally, because I think that's the biggest thing that's going to help you to stop giving power to everybody else by constantly apologizing for who you are. It's the reason I wore the hat today, because I am unapologetically wearing one of my favorite hats and throwing on the glasses so I can see the screen a little bit better and all that kind of stuff. That's me. There you go. Hats with a hoodie. I don't know if it's a thing, but right now it's a thing. So the first thing that I want to do is, yes, I'm looking at the screen because this is right here and it's got my notes and I took a lot of notes on this one. First thing I want to do is cover the Merriam-Webster definition of guilt, basically. And it defines guilt as a feeling of deserving blame, especially for imagined offenses or from a sense of inadequacy. Ooh, there's a lot to unpack in that. A feeling of deserving blame, especially for imagined offenses. Let's just stick to that because that's a juicy little INFJ bit right there if I've ever heard one. So basically, anytime that you are apologizing or saying the words, "I'm sorry," there is an element of guilt to it. There is something in you that is causing that reaction to make the words "I'm sorry" fly out of your face. Now, granted, it's not in every scenario. I understand that. It's not 100% of the time. If you're at a funeral and a friend of yours, like somebody that they know or that's in their family just passed away, it is absolutely appropriate to go up and shake their hand and say, "I am sorry. I'm sorry for your loss," or "I'm sorry," or condolences, or what have you. You don't go up to that person and say, "I'm not sorry. Like, it wasn't me who drank a case of beer and then decided to pee on the electric fence. Like, it's not my problem." That's the wrong time to really overanalyze the words "I'm sorry." So don't do that. I'm sorry in a lot of ways means I am to blame for this. But are you? Or is this some kind of INFJ mind trick? This is not the blame you're looking for. You know what I'm talking about. It's a Star Wars reference. The real trouble here is that you need to identify if sorry is appropriate before you say it, not after you say it. Because then it's too late. It's out of your face by that point. And so let's not do that. So how do we identify that? And what really is at work for us when we have that urge to apologize for something? So some cognitive function talk here. Intuition is at work in you all the time, and it is collecting information and it is painting little pictures, and those pictures, think of them as black and white, little sketches, right? Black and white ink sketches of things that you have been through, things that you have experienced recently or in the past. And it's this huge catalog. It's a giant library in your subconscious mind that is collecting all of this information and every once in a while throwing stuff together that forms a picture. Now that picture gets color by FE and by TI. So your external feeling looks at what intuition has put together. Thinking is going to look at that colored picture and then make a logical determination about it of some kind. It's not always super reliable, but it's there and you can kind of hone that. So that's sort of how this thing works, right? Something happens, intuition puts a bunch of stuff together, FE lends color to it, and TI looks at it, makes an analysis, and then you start making the judgments. Now there is another function that I want to kind of highlight, which is one of your shadow functions, which is internal feeling, FI. I believe it is called the critical parent in INFJ talk. FI is that voice that's in there that typically assigns blame to you. And it's typically that uncertain how I feel about something kind of way. And it's what will weigh you down. And it's probably one of those components. You ever notice when something just seems off and you get that gut feeling and you know something is wrong, perhaps you're involved in some way or whatever else, but it's that pit of your stomach, unsettling sort of feeling something is not right. A lot of times that is FI running wild in you. And it tends to happen because you pick up things with your intuition, you think about them in some way, you come to some determination of some kind, you pick up more things, you're stuck in that NITI loop now, and your feeling is just going to go nuts. So let's think about a scenario, right? You receive a phone call from a friend, and something is obviously wrong with this friend. So if there's something going on, you can just tell that they're off on the telephone, right? So intuition and thinking are going to go to work. I wrote down some notes here, so I'm going to just read these like this. Intuition is like, okay, you ask them if they're okay, and they said, I'm fine. Internal thinking is going to say, okay, nobody is ever fine when they say I'm fine, like that's a fact. And so something is going on, just logically thinking, something is off. They said they're fine, they're not fine. Intuition says, I spoke to them 3 days ago, and we had a pleasant conversation 3 days ago. And thinking is like, okay, was there something that you missed? You were very busy 3 days ago. You were at work and you were doing this, that, and the other. And is there a possibility that you didn't pick up on something that they had said? Intuition comes back and says, well, yesterday and the day before I've been at work because it's been a really busy week at work and I've been overloaded with stuff. Thinking is like, okay, so you haven't really been able to pay attention or focus on anything, but something is obviously wrong. Intuition says, I didn't have time to call them yesterday. And thinking was like, yeah, you were in the break room and you were stuffing your face with a ham sandwich. You forgot to look at your calendar and you said you were going to, but you didn't. Then by the time you got home and there were kids and shuffling around and everything else, and you just spaced it, and here you are today. And intuition was like, okay, yesterday I didn't look at my calendar. I was supposed to look at my calendar, what was on my calendar. And then thinking says, oh crap, yesterday was your friend's birthday and you missed it. And internal feeling is like, hey, you're the worst friend ever, by the way. So that's a typical kind of scenario and how things will bounce around and how you will come to a conclusion of having to say, I'm sorry for something. And in that case, you missed your friend's birthday. You apologize for that. I'm sorry I missed your birthday. It's not an excuse, but I've just been very busy and I apologize. And usually that's that, and everybody is fine. It's a perfectly reasonable thing to say you are sorry for. Now, in a similar scenario where a friend calls you and they're not feeling, you feel like something is unsettled or something is off, and then you start to go through that process again and like talk to them a few days ago and they were fine and so on and so forth and everything happened okay, and now they're not fine. And if your friend comes out and says, you know what, I was hurting really bad yesterday and I tried to call you at work and you didn't answer the phone and I feel terrible. Now you've got to look at that and say, okay, are they feeling terrible because of me? Here's where you start to make the judgment as to whether you need to feel the guilt or not, and whether that guilt is justified or not. Your friend feels terrible. Are they feeling terrible because you didn't pick up the phone when they called? Or are they feeling terrible about their circumstances? And do you need to apologize for being busy at work? Because for a lot of INFJs, we're so concerned with the feelings of other people that we're going to go ahead and say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I let you down. I was really busy. I apologize, and so on and so forth. And you're tripping over yourself to say you're sorry because your friend needed you and you were unable to answer the phone. But should you be apologizing for that? For being busy, being at work, trying to make money to put food on your table, if you really couldn't make a phone call? It is not your fault that your friend is feeling terrible. They have circumstances that they're going through, and those circumstances are not your fault. They're not your responsibility. So why are you apologizing? Are you apologizing that they feel bad? In which case, okay. The right things to say is probably something like, I understand that that's tough. Like, I understand you're feeling bad right now. What can I do to help you? Is there anything I can say? Those kinds of things are okay, and they're good gestures to do. But going straight to I'm sorry because somebody feels bad, is that really your responsibility? Is that really something that you feel like you are to blame for? Remember the definition, right? Merriam-Webster defines guilt as a feeling of deserving blame, especially for imagined offenses or from a sense of inadequacy. So are you a terrible person? Or are you not a terrible person? And do you just have your own things? And if you have somebody that you feel like saying you're sorry to, are you saying you're sorry for just being who you are? If somebody comes up to me and says, I don't like your hat, I'm not going to say I'm sorry. I'm going to say, well, this is my hat. I like it. Your feelings aren't my problem. Do you know what I mean? So you don't want to go that far. You don't want to overstep this apologizing. So how do we not feel the guilt for these things? Well, we need to step back and we need to look at the situation with a little bit of logic and say, all right, what are the actual circumstances around this? Am I ready to say I'm sorry for something I have done? Or am I ready to say I'm sorry because I feel bad for that person or what they're going through? And if that's the case, are they saying that I am at fault? And am I truly at fault? And I think that's the important thing to try and delineate when you're considering guilt and considering apologizing and considering hashtag sorry, not sorry, and all of those things. What is the actual communication? What is the actual thing that's being said? So this is a tough topic because there's so many elements at work. I think as INFJs, we do have a propensity to feel apologetic and to feel like we are a burden and to feel like we are guilty for something. I receive a lot of messages from people who watch this channel, and almost all of them either start with an apology or end with an apology. So it starts with an I'm sorry I'm bothering you, or I'm sorry to disturb you, or I know you're busy, I'm sorry I just have a question. Now, I'm sorry is usually in there somewhere, which is kind of silly because you're asking the question. Just skip the I'm sorry part. Do you know what I mean? And then perhaps there's a question, there's an email, there's something. Some of you write a life story to me. And while I appreciate you reaching out, it can be a lot. And I'm not a therapist. So there's that too. But at the end of it, I'll see it again. I'm sorry I wrote so much, or I'm sorry if I'm burdening you, or I'm sorry. It's always I'm sorry for something. And it's almost like a classic INFJ kind of thing, a classic sign of INFJ behavior when somebody is stuck in a loop and FI is down there as one of your shadow functions and it's yelling at you about it. And so I just come to expect it. And you know what? I do it too. The first one to say, total hypocrite here. I am constantly apologizing for things. Now, a lot of times I do it for comedic effect, like, hey, I'm wearing a hat today. Sorry. Or something like along those lines. But it's something that I have to try and keep in check too, and really step back. Usually when I'm feeling really bad about something, and I have a friend that's in distress, or, somebody's upset somewhere in my life, and I have to step back and be like, okay, wait, these are the reasons why that person is upset. Am I responsible for any of those reasons? Did I do that? They're upset because they got a flat tire. They're cranky. They're angry. They're a little passive aggressive. Am I at fault? No. So I'm going to let them cool, and it's all good, and I will be here if they need me. And that's a good and reasonable way to sort of approach it, is to try and think of that logically. So I'm going to wrap it up right there. This is just a quicker one in this series because there's a bit to go on, but it's kind of like an obvious thing. Analyze why you are about to say the words "I'm sorry" before you say them. Are you at fault? Are you truly at fault? And if so, okay, apologize. If not, why are you apologizing? And why are you saying "I'm sorry"? Because you have nothing to apologize for. You're just being you. Don't apologize for being who you are. And that's totally okay. It's okay to be the scatterbrained person. It's okay to be the overthinker. It's okay to be all those things. But, understand that maybe, just maybe, you shouldn't apologize for being. You shouldn't apologize for being that person that thinks idealistically, gets lost in their own head, and has possibilities all over the place, and sometimes can be pretty scatterbrained about it. Don't apologize for that. That's just you. That's okay. And people will resonate with that. The right people will. The people that don't get it, don't. But don't ever apologize for just being who you are. It's an important lesson. So thank you for watching this one. Video number 5 is going to be out tomorrow, and that one is going to be on, what is it? Following your heart and staying sane. As if that's a possibility. I'm sorry. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to finish up right there. Thank you so much. Please, pretty please, like, share, subscribe, and put something in the comments. Something that you apologize for that you shouldn't have, or something that was a sincere apology, or maybe a funny apology story of some kind. I always love reading this kind of stuff, and it's always nice to engage with you. So thank you for watching. I'm sorry. I can't do it. I can't do that with a straight face. I appreciate you, and I will see you on the next video.